Well, we'll get started. For those that are here, welcome. Thanks for attending our monthly webinar here at eHarmony Care. Excited to show you what we got today. It is a little bit different. We wanted to try something new this month, and I did want you to know we do record these every month and send them out to you. So if you were not able to attend, you will get this. But we're excited because we wanted to introduce you to one of our friends in the profession, and Mitch Smith, and some brilliant minds, and expose you to other leaders and firms in the space. So this is what we wanted to try to do. I know you've listened and watched John LaFront, our CEO, the last few times since we've done this. And so this is kind of exciting and fun to expose you to other people and progressive minds. And the reason you all are here is because you are progressive minds, and we wanted to show you different and good content for you. So we, of course, would love your feedback. We're always looking for feedback and how we can better ourselves and how we present and how we do these webinars. So my name is Sam Ashby, by the way. I'm the Director of Sales for eHarmony Care. And I, without further ado, am going to turn the time over to Mitch Smith with eFuneral. Mitch.
Pleasure, everybody. I always think it's funny. Clearly, I'm not in this rustic ski resort or whatever is behind me. We're in a new world, right? It's a world that starts with, like, can you hear me? Double tapping the microphone, and some really interesting things come out of that. What we're going to talk about today is a whole new way to think about leads. And we're going to liken it to online dating. So we'll go through, we've got some fun examples. Purely from a housekeeping perspective, up on one screen, I've got the questions and everything. So if you have anything, feel free to drop it in the Q&A. Feel free to raise your hand. I'm open to accepting those at any time. If I say something that you want me to give more context on, go ahead and ask in the moment, because there's no better time to dig into stuff than exactly when we're talking about it. So what we're going to talk about today is how the world is changing. Hopefully this is kind of a fun way to think about it. And it really is about how to connect with more people, and more people that you may have not talked to, or you may have thought about in a different way, right? How do we adapt to forced situations, right? How do we have this profession evolve just as quickly as our consumers are? And our hope really is, how do we figure out a way to identify, how do we reach and attract more leads? And as it relates to this very handy dandy deck, I did not put it together. My name is Mitch Smith. I lead our partnership development side of things at eFuneral. The guy behind the scenes who is not able to join me, far more attractive, just a little bit more hair, is Nick Grant. He leads all of our marketing and does a wonderful job with our content. What we're going to talk about today, though, is not eFuneral. I'll just give you guys some context as to why I'm sitting here. So we're an online tool that allows funeral homes to put a link on their website so that their families can facilitate pre-need or at-need transactions. So why are we equipped to have a conversation about leads? We spend a sizable amount of time talking with our funeral home partners about different and better ways for them to attract, get more leads, but fundamentally how to think differently about the sales funnel. So as we're starting to pick this matter apart, I always like to take every problem I can find and boil it down to its simplest parts. What you're seeing here on the screen, and I'd love your guesses if you guys want to throw them into the chat. What in the world do you think this is from 1990 to 2018? But fundamentally, for those who have been married really for the last 5 to 75 years, you've probably noticed that the dating scene has changed a little bit, right? We're no longer going to pool halls or meeting people in the way we used to. I'm immune of this. I've been married for 10 years and never had the opportunity to use these apps, but I get to see them very firsthand, and they seem so daunting and complicated, right? So what we're going to be talking about today is the changing perception. So what is this? This is the US divorce rate since 1990. What we're going to talk about today, and trust me, this will all come full circle, is how generation of leads online is like dating in the online space. The biggest thing that's changed, and this is not just in dating, but we require so much more information. From buying a pair of shoes to meeting a soulmate, apparently, we require more pieces of information before we're willing to potentially engage in that interaction. And the beauty of where we're at today, in terms of technology at least, is how we now have technology partners that can help us bridge that gap. But what we're left with is this human understanding of how to use this technology to better facilitate that need of information. So why has the divorce rate dropped from 1990 through 2018? Report after report after report says it's because the individuals are learning more about each other as they get into those relationships. Kind of an interesting takeaway. We're going to talk about some of these players in the space. Now, online dating has been around for a long time, decades. Actually, one of my first roles out of college, I graduated from Iowa State, was working on an app very similar to the end here, but trying to get language and copy so that people were comfortable even doing this. But two of the forerunners of this were eHarmony and Match.com. Now, what they do is they use algorithms to match you based on multiple choice questions, right? Are you into hiking, skiing, that type of situation? Some of the newer ones to come into the space have tried to change the game in terms of how we as humans are interacting with those apps, Tinder or Bumble. And then you have some really, really niche ones, like our favorite here, we're in Des Moines, Iowa, farmersonly.com, or Raya, which is actually a dating app for the stars, an ultra exclusive, think like Khloe Kardashian, Ben Affleck. I don't even know if those people are in relationships or not, but if they weren't, they would be able to use Raya to find their specific match. And regardless of the app, the odds are in your favor. There are 40 million online daters in the US. And it's become $1 billion industry in the last year alone. But not everyone can succeed in these dating apps. It's difficult to find the right person. And we're going to talk about the principles that align to both dating and trying to find that exact fit for your individual business and your funeral home. Right? Sounds just like lead generation, right? We're trying to find the right people at the right time. So how are these guys the same? Now let's think about it. To start, they're nourished online, almost exclusively, maybe not all the time. What about this? Every one of us has a specific type, a target, something we want to focus on. There's some potential there. Right? You have to have a unique profile. You have to have a unique opportunity, something that attracts that person to either your website or your dating profile. You need to create your own story, and they need to have space to accept that story. And finally, once you match, you have to make sure that you continue the conversation. More importantly, how are you listening to the needs of those individuals? And how are you committing to them after they've made that initial match? So we understand that online dating and lead generation are very simple in explanation and very, very complicated in execution, but it all depends on your approach. So if you just want to try to skip past the very beginning, skip past the type, right, you're going to fall on your face in some instances. But if you want to make it all the way to marriage, so to speak, we're going to talk about some steps along the way that you want to make sure that you're touching as it relates to these leads. Understanding your type. Nick, who's a very funny guy, the very first thing we talked about with this was like, Mitch, why don't you go, talk about your type? I'm like, that's so less relative than my wife's type, right? We've been together for 15 years and clearly she's got like a Mr. Clean thing. But for us to get as far as we did in the relationship, she had to learn about my quirks and my idiosyncrasies. What we're going to talk about through the remainder of this is there's so many of the dating steps that are skipped in lead generation. A lead is generated off the website. Someone reaches out to you off of DemoniCare, and the assumption is there's going to be an immediate transition into a sale. But much more than that, I want you guys to think about what is your type. It's so much more about demographics, right? We as eFuneral know our type is a 63-year-old skewing female, may have suffered a loss in recent days, right? That sounds morbid, but we understand that the key motivators for our audience, especially within a pre-need space, are going to be around age, gender, and geography relative to the location of the funeral home. As we dive down into things deeper like demographics and psychographics and different ways to target them, it all boils back to the key motivators as it relates to pre-need. But it's so much more than demographics, right? We want to figure out a way to get them to raise their hand. Once they've raised their hand, how do we as eFuneral make sure that that is not a bad date? That's a good date. I'm going to show you some clips along the way. I'm going to show you one video in particular. But what we're finding from an eFuneral perspective is for us to have fully understood who we're targeting, we needed to spend a lot of time researching several things. How do they shop? When do they shop? Who do they trust? Why do they trust them? Those 4 factors told us everything we needed to know about their buying processes. And then from there, we just had to align to where they were purchasing. We started off by looking at baby boomers as a whole, realizing that's not the entirety of the audience, but a really quality place to start. They're spending 27 hours a week online. So take a deep breath and let that sink in. A quarter of their waking hours online. Now, am I saying that they're on your funeral home website or on eFuneral? Probably not. It's just as likely Candy Crush as it is their Outlook, but they are there. They are using the devices. And suffice to say, if we don't take advantage of that, we've missed a massive opportunity. What else do we know? 48% of baby boomers will visit a company's website after seeing their content on social media. So we know they're online, and we know that if we give them the right information, we can bring them into our ecosystem. So let that sit for just a second longer. What if this pandemic lingers? What if we're forced to exclusively serve customers in a way going forward in a manner that we thought was temporary? And then for us, kind of the last stat we looked at, 92% of baby boomers will shop for goods and services online. Is that a service? Hard to say. Could be shoes, right? Could be lots and lots of things. But what do we know as a company? They're online. They're interested in your content and they want to see your website. And if it meets their need, they'll buy it. Point blank, it's time to start viewing customers as consumers first. This allows you to understand their basic premises as it relates to how they're shopping and when they're shopping. They will always be families. They will always be customers. But if we can trust that they're thinking like consumers first, then all we have to do is give them what they want to help facilitate that sale. There's been a lot of change in tradition over the last couple of months. My tradition was get a coffee every morning on the way to work, much to my bank account's demise. But it was my way of starting the day, I guess, and decompressing in a weird way. Right? I think we all have things that have shifted. I got the chance to teach my 2 wonderful boys from home, and quickly they became not wonderful once the tablet was the only way for us to communicate with the educators. So as things shift and as things change, a lot of businesses can be found maybe putting their heels in the ground, saying this is how we do things, which is great. It's your business. I'm not questioning the way to run it. What we have seen happen over and over and over again, though, is that consumers are super, super good at getting what they want. Okay? We've seen some apps make food service easier. I don't know about you guys, but I can't tell you the last time I walked into a grocery store. Just it's so much easier to go on my app and have it delivered. These are some things we've seen change in the space. And these statistics were pulled pre-pandemic, and we've actually kind of tested them through, and they've held, right? 46% of people will handle their arrangements virtually, right? And I'm not saying that's through an eFuneral. I'm not saying that's through a Parting Pro or someone similar. I'm saying they're going to begin the process somewhere electronically. And then whether they handle that on their own or they handle that in person with a funeral director, they're going to begin the process on their own studying. What about this one? 52% will only do business that with companies that provide their prices online. Talk about a major shift in tradition, right? There's always been the inkling that there's going to be forced GPLs online, and that's created a lot of maybe unrest in the space. But the way I think about it is a little different. Put your prices on your website if you like, or if you don't. By no means here to change your mind on that. What we found over time, talking to families, talking to consumers, is that clarity builds trust, trust builds respect, respect builds business. So if I can follow those steps and all I have to do is open a door that they would never have had access to, I may be able to change the conversation. And finally, well, in terms of this slide at least, 73% of people say it's important to have pre-planned funeral arrangements. I'm imagining that this doesn't surprise you guys. But as consumer behavior changes, what will this force the profession to do? Introduce technology or other long-term implications for sales processes within the funeral home, right? And how quickly can businesses adapt to meet the need? Well, what I'm here to say is this isn't scary, right? They're demanding transparency through digital transformation. And what does that mean? It's like the perfect quintessential marketing line, right? You can see it right at top, across the top of a website or on a banner ad. What does it mean? Consumers are exceptional, the best at getting what they want. If we remember the very first car ad that had prices on it, just even think about what company it might have been. It was a Saturn. And the reason I know that so deeply is because my wife had a Saturn Vue that we had to fix the transmission on 4 or 5 times. They were the very first company to introduce pricing on a car website, or on a commercial rather. And when is the last time that you didn't see a car presented in that format? Consumers get what they want because they're the ones holding most of the chips. So if we can meet them where they're at, see the changing tides, where we're going to be better situated for today and in the future, not only handling leads that come in through the website or other means, but also once that phone's picked up or they walk through your door, those means of doing business are still going to be in place. I love memes. I hope you guys love memes. What is this one trying to talk about? If you've already identified that my ideal target, right, is a X-year-old individual, they're interested in the fine arts and they may spend some time in California as they vacation. Who knows? Your type is your type. You may think that your leads coming in are going to change that. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Your ideal target should still be your ideal target. But your goal, just like online dating, is how do I get as many leads as possible, as many dates as possible? How do I test the waters? So some people thinking, man, my target is my target, but those people coming in my website, man, they're not quite as important as the people I've been dropping mail to get a hold of. Anyone that raises their hand has some level of interest. And what we'll talk about as we move along is that level of interest is going to wane and grow depending on your flexibility and your ability to meet them where they are. What you're going to find too is some customers are far less profitable than other customers. Some leads are worth parting with. Right? But consider segmenting your customers into groups. Right? This is something that Damani does all the time. Right? They know exactly who's coming in their doors, and they know exactly how those leads that are getting sent to your families. And they get to see in real time their interactions. They know what these people are interested in, and they know how to better serve them. You want to be treated as an individual. We need to expect that the people coming off of our website are done the exact same. And now that we know who we want to date, or at least some parameters about who we want to have a conversation with, we need to think about our dating profile. We need to think about our website. So for those who are familiar with The Office, the commercial in a moment is a bit shocking, but quite telling in terms of its content. I'm going to let Michael Scott speak for himself.
Yes, it is true. I, Michael Scott, am signing up with an online dating service. Thousands of people have done it, and I am going to do it. I need a username, and I have a great one. Little Kid Lover. That way people will know exactly where my priorities are at.
I can tell you right now, my Match.com profile is not going to talk about my quarantine weight gain and my bad knees, right? My customers need to know where my priorities are at. My goal is to be irresistible to the targets, to the leads that I want to target. In an online space, whether we're thinking about Facebook, Instagram, web page, whatever means you're communicating, it is the quintessential speed dating. And if you try to marry everyone right away, you're going to burden your staff's time and you're going to slow down your conversions. So as the numbers go up, we need to understand how to handle those. But for us to be able to attract the best type of talent, what story are you telling on your website? If I were to ask you right now, what is your elevator pitch? You have 10 seconds to tell me why you're best at what you do. And there is no good and there is no bad story. There needs to be a prominent brand. There needs to be a price leader. There needs to be someone that falls in the middle. We all remember economics class, right? You've got the price and you've got conversion or consumption of those goods. There's a place for everyone to fit. And how do you stand out? It is absolutely okay for you to fly your flag and be what you are. We spend a lot of time with websites for funeral homes going through evaluating, and we've talked to price leaders, and they spend the entire time on their website talking about their legacy, right? But I ask them, is that the first thing that you want them to see when they come in the door? And they say, well, no, I want them to know that we're the best price in town. I'm like, then tell that story. And counter to that, if you are the predominant brand, should you be talking about your rates across packages? Maybe. But fundamentally, what is the thing that you want to tell everybody? What is your first impression? Because I can promise you this, if you don't tell them, someone else will. This book, and I'm going to be really honest with you guys, I was forced to read it when Nick put it on this slide, but I was happy I did. And the entire book is not about the curse of knowledge, but at minimum, it's a really good book. The goal of the book is to help you understand how ideas stick. There's a portion of that book called The Curse of Knowledge. I think every single one of us struggle with this every day. Now, I want everyone to go to the chat. The first one to guess this wins like 150 cool points. But I'm talking about a fruit. It's a large fruit, bigger than a football, green with darker green stripes, red on the inside, black seeds. What is it? There it is, a watermelon. The curse of knowledge is you're not able to unknow something once you know it. An internal struggle that we have at eFuneral as an example is use of a tool, right? People's familiarity with Zoom. And we spend so much time understanding the things that we tripped on that we often associate those same hurdles to our consumers, even though we fix those hurdles in the system. If you go into a conversation, or you go into a website creation, or you go into a lead conversation or a meeting with the family, knowing what you're not good at and projecting those things forward, now your losses are still losses and your wins are mitigated. For you to do your best business over and over and over again, your goal is to maximize the good, minimize the bad. Whether that's marketing the good more effectively or training away the things that you're not as quality at, you need to think about this. You need to drink your own Kool-Aid, especially when you're creating content for people to see. You need to be believable and authentic. And most importantly, you need to be attractive enough to pursue. And if you want to test whether you are being authentic and believable, go to the people you know best and ask them the question, does this meet our business needs? Does this sound like a service that I would provide? And if you're getting some head nods or shaking, you probably need to go back to the drawing board. Authenticity is not your first thought. Authenticity is who you are at your core. And this can be the most difficult thing to portray. When you think like your customers, as they're looking for your services, you will fundamentally shift the way you present content to them. If you're thinking like a staff presenting sales opportunities to families, those are two very different conclusions that the consumer is going to come to. So I challenge you, as you go to modify websites, as you go to put mailers, think consumer first. Think with them. What's in it for me? What is going to get a consumer to raise their hand and come my direction in the face of every other place they have to spend funds? Right? Now that you've got it down, man, your website is tight. You know who your type is. You're ready to hit the market, right? You're ready to hit Farmers Only or Raya, right? You're ready to hit Google or Facebook. Drink your own Kool-Aid. Drink your own Kool-Aid until your staff knows where to find that Kool-Aid so they can drink it. Once then, your consumers will see what you're doing. They will buy into your believability and your authenticity, and the battle is really almost won. Now let's think about some simple rules for online dating. Right? Again, I never online dated, so let's assume that Nick put this together correctly. Honesty, right? It seems so simple, but to be honest in a relationship, you have to start off on the right foot, right? Whether you're immediately interested or not, dishonesty or consumer misperception will sink a ship. Excuse me. This profession has spent decades shedding that perception. And if we give them a chance to revalidate it, it's going to be very difficult to come out of that conversation looking good. So be honest, be transparent, right? We don't have plaid sports coats with leather patches, right? We're just there to serve the families. Number two, read the room. If we were all on a date and she were to say, go to the restroom, open the window and leave, right? I learned something pretty quickly about how she feels about the interactions. Or maybe she sit there quietly the entire time as I talked her head off. Weird, I'm pretty good at that. Communication is key. Know when it's time to hit the gas. I know that this lead that came off Facebook, it really has some interest. I want to get them in today. I want to get them planning right away. And know when they just want to know more about you. Maybe they just want to be on your mailing list, right? Maybe they want to come in for a lunch and learn. And finally, be memorable, right? I'm sure we can all think of our most memorable dating, fill in the blank. We'll call it a failure. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Being memorable is knowing your value proposition and how that differentiates you from the other candidates. You've drank the Kool-Aid, help them understand what makes you different. Now we're going to start to think about how these things work, how people get into your queue. Now we're going to transition off of the dating apps back into actual things that you can take to the funeral home today. You've got different ways to think about the sales funnel. Social media is free, right? It's an easy place to start to tell your story in order to give individuals a glimpse into what you offer. If people are searching for terms that are relevant to you, right? Burial services, Phoenix, Arizona, right? You may pop up. You may accidentally come into their view. So making sure that you have everything right from a website, social media perspective is a good way to begin the lead generation process. Additionally, your search engine optimization, which can be a very convoluted thought process, but the website providers can take care of that. And additionally, you can pay for advertising through Google or other vendors. I'll tell you right now, if the fear of doing this on your own is overwhelming, it's not going to get any easier. Find a provider that does this. If you want to build your brand, if you want to drive your message, it is so okay to find someone to help you do this. I've got their attention. They came to my website. They came to my Facebook page. They tweeted my Instagram, whatever the case may be. Now that they're on the page, you've got some time to help build the consideration phase of the sales funnel. This is content. This is giving them the information that they're seeking. This isn't always pricing. It could be videos. It could be stories of your family. It could be testimonials from clients. It could be lots and lots and lots of things. But understanding what people want when they come to your website is the very first thing to do. If you guys can sit down with your staff this week, go on the whiteboard and ask yourself, what do I want every single person that comes to my website to get from the website? Write those things down, pick your top 3. Go to your website. Is it doing it? The reason I have these website educational resources, lead capture tools here, it really is up to what you want to be doing. If you want them to be raising their hand, do you have a lead capture form front and center? If you want them to learn more about funeral services in general, do you have the content for them to consume? Are you doing what you're preaching? And then finally, conversion. Conversion can mean different things for different people. As an online pre-need tool, conversion for most of our funeral homes is either did we generate a high percentage closed lead or did we sell? Conversion for you may be they filled out a form to learn more about your services. Conversion may be that they went down the entire planning process through a form on your website. It really is up to you. I'm by no means here to prescribe this. The notion of this is, how do I get their attention? Once I have it, how do I keep it? Once I've kept it, how do I get them to raise their hand? We're going to show you some examples of lead tools. This is a tool that we built. Is it perfect? No. How did we get to where we're at? We knew that we had funeral homes that had a balanced scale and we needed to help them find the middle of. There's some people who are ready to go online and purchase. We have our tool for that. What we found here is there's going to be a larger audience that really just wants to dip their toe into information without having to provide us with too much detail. They may be comfortable giving us their first name, last name, maybe even potentially an email. But if I'm asking for too much right away, they're going to run. We've seen some really, really cool examples. Here we go. Sorry that's not running. This is one of the best examples you're going to find. There we go. Carvana is asking you to tell the system what's most important to you. In this example, comfort, fuel efficiency, and safety, and space. What you're going to see throughout this process is not once do they want to know where you live, who you are, or how many people you're going to put in that vehicle, short of the questions that you're going to answer. Which fundamentally would be the thing that you think Carvana would want to know. How do I get a hold of these people? Because the entire car buying process is electronically. But what they found is if they can get you far enough along in this process, they know that you're going to come back and do it again and again and again. And you're going to go search that same Acadia across multiple websites. So they know that they are the very first place that most car consumers are going to start, even though they may never buy a car from Carvana. So what is their conversion? Right? This is their conversion. They know if they can get you this far, there's then a percentage chance that you're going to move to the next phase, which is raise your hand. And there's a percentage chance that you're going to move to the next phase, which is eventually purchase. But they identified long before we knew what Carvana was or we saw the car vending machines, exactly what they needed to do to get you to close a sale. This is a really cool one too. And for anyone in search of more health components in their life, it's called Care Of. And you go through and you fill out this small quiz, right? So it's basically asking you, what are you here for? Are you looking for supplements? Are you looking for different ways to lose weight? Or you're struggling with sleep? All they ask me is, what is my name and what am I interested in? Though they don't know how to get a hold of me yet, they've created a really dynamic and diverse profile as to what I want. Their trigger, their cue, they know that I have some level of interest in learning about supplements. I, behind the keyboard, know they have supplements. So if I have enough interest, I'm going to move along and answer all their questions. And by the time I provide them with my contact information, they have a full profile built on me, right? They know that I'm interested in skincare. They know I want to sleep better. They know I'm interested in optimizing my physical performance from a workout perspective. Talk about powerful data, right? Looking at these Carvanas, looking at these Care Ofs, so many things can fall by the wayside as it relates to this is overwhelming. I have too much information. Know what you're good at. Get into that room on the whiteboard, figure out what you want everyone to talk about, and then ask yourself, are you talking about it? And now you're to the first date, right? That lead came off of Facebook. Your phone is ringing. Someone walked through the door that otherwise wouldn't have walked through the door. So now what do? Right? First, it's imperative to understand how to communicate to them. If they came to you via email, begin the conversation via email. Pump the brakes, right? Understand what speed they want to go. As they move along and as they provide you with more information, say a phone number, it's time to make that call, right? The very first thing that you wouldn't do after a first date is call their mother and father and ask for their hand in marriage. Maybe not, right? You want to get them on a trip to the Amalfi Coast, right? You want to get them there for 2 weeks. You want to learn about each other. You want to spend weeks and weeks and weeks understanding everything that has to do with this person that you're about to do either business with or spend your life with. We need to give that same credence to leads, right? We need to understand what makes them tick, because them selling is not their main priority. Their main priority is making sure that they've made the right decision. So if you can align your conversion to theirs and helping them make the right decision and helping them drink the Kool-Aid, you're already halfway there, right? Are you exactly as you described? Is your website everything that you told them it would be? So content from videos, right? For those spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, you're probably going to find that one of the most genuine people is a guy named Wilton Hung for Ring Ring Marketing. And the reason I think he's gotten so far is because his first date are him in apparently the endless amount of hotel rooms that he spends going to all these different shows. But just he has an idea, he records a video, he posts it, and then he has a genuine interaction back and forth. What is your first date? Okay. The lead, as they enter, read the room, understand what they're interested in, and get them to the point where they are drinking the Kool-Aid right along with you. And then they will have made the choice on their own. And then as you move to what can be the most difficult part of the conversation, asking for the sale, they're already there with you. Now we've got some games and some things here that probably aren't quite as relevant, especially since we're running low on question time. So I'm just going to skip to the next phase of this, which is in conclusion, right? Get to know your audience as consumers, not just customers, right? Build your story. Start with your content approach that speaks to your audience when and where they need it. If you have no idea what that means, that's all right. Find a partner to help. Remember, what you drive your audience through is only as good as the touch points you create. Let's think to that whiteboard you have now. What's most important to you is that they know that you have a staff that's there 24 hours a day. When they land on your website, all they're seeing is a serene picture of water and maybe some geese. Right? Are you telling the story you want? You can have the best intentions in the world, but if they're not being communicated the right way on Facebook, on Google, on your website, you potentially are missing the mark. And now that you have leads, don't stop. Literally do it over and over and over and over and over and over again. I'm assuming for most of you, the amount of interaction virtually has changed fundamentally. And as we move into, my favorite generation, the millennials, as we begin planning for our loved ones, our level of required engagement is lower than it will be for my father, right? My dad, as an example, always has $300 in cash in his wallet, and he just will tell anyone that will listen, because you never know what will happen, right? Right? He's only done business with certain people in certain fields because that's the relationship. I think that's amazing. As it relates to my generation, we're more like that. As it relates to my kid's generation, as long as he gets what he wants, it doesn't matter to him if he's met you 1 time or 100 times. Right? Consumers were going to change. That's the nature of what we do. If we can understand that, follow them, help nurture them, we're going to be in a much better position. So if we don't have any questions, I have some wonderful canned ones that set it up for a perfectly canned answer on my part, but I would love to open the floor to anybody that has any questions, or John or Caden or Sam, if there's any other context you think would be helpful, but by all means, would love to address some questions. Perfect. I could go down the list of the ones I have. What are some great examples of lead capture that you've seen? So though Nick on our marketing team built this, I think Kara was wonderful, and I think Carvana is wonderful. What I think is my favorite lead capture of all time, and I'm a huge hockey fan. I'm a Colorado Avalanche fan. My boys are hockey players. It's like it encompasses our entire life. But I had an opportunity to spend time at the Bauer Experience in Minneapolis, right? And the reason I knew that the Bauer Experience existed is because I had received an email that Bauer, and somehow was tracking my cookies, knew I was in the city. They sent this long email about their differences, right? They had me hooked before I even knew where the store was on Google. Right? They knew I was heading their direction. They found a way to get me into the location. They even gave me a coupon for when I went in. Right. So what did I do? I drove to find it. I took my boys with me. We bought 2 new sticks. Bauer left happy. It's not always about how do I get them to buy. It's about what makes them think differently. How do I do something cool and unique? What is your struggle with online lead capture? Our biggest struggle with online lead capture is getting them to pick up the phone. So within our lead tool, people that are coming and asking for an eFuneral demo, or people that are coming and asking for, say, more information on sessions like this, they're willing to raise their hand and they're willing to listen. But as it relates to getting a hold of them, it can be slow. I am the king of this. I have been missing phone calls all day from people on my team just because I'm busy. You're busy, right? The consumers are busy. If we assume that they're missing our phone calls or missing our emails because they don't have time for it, I think we're fundamentally missing the mark. You really have to try and try and try and try again to get a hold of them, right? And if we can't get a hold of them, they're not saying I don't want to do business. What they're saying is I don't want to do business right now. So keep them in queue and think about them the same way you think about someone that walks through the door, because they are a consumer that raised hands. And then what will you take to your funeral home, right? Or to your funeral home partners? I encourage you, that whiteboarding session is one of the coolest things we could do. We do this in our office all the time. Here's the scene. Get one of those big whiteboards, right? Even the ones that peel at work. Everyone that's in the room gets a set of sticky notes and a Sharpie. And I want you all to come up with the 3 ideas, 3 concepts of what your funeral home does best. Right? Build profiles around why that is the case. Once you have those profiles, take it to your Facebook, take it to your videos, take it to your social media, take it to your lobby. Are you doing everything the way that you believe you're doing it? And if you're not, what an amazing opportunity to quickly and at pretty minimal cost, dramatically impact the way the consumers are experiencing you and your brand. Nick's funny, a little shiny thing on my head. I really appreciate all of you. And for those this is being recorded, I'm sure that they will give you information on how to get a hold of me. I love talking through these ideas. Right? I've been in the profession since early 2019. Prior to that, I worked in the banking sector. I worked in the technology sector. I worked for payment processing. I worked for Mutual of Omaha for a long time. So I've been forming a career that has led me into technology, helping insurance companies and large, I'm going to call it antiquated companies, the technology providers and the payment processors, solve problems in different ways. So there is no silver bullet, which is, good and bad, but it's all about how you perceive things. So clearly you're not asking questions because the applause is just drowning you out. And I thank you so much. But if anything comes up, you guys know how to get a hold of Sam. And I really appreciate all you guys do for your families.
Thank you, Mitch. Awesome presentation. I really appreciate it. And everybody look forward to this in your inbox.